Good evening, good morning. My apologies. This program was supposed to come on air 2 hours ago, but unfortunately, I was tied up with another program. Tonight, I wanted to discuss the issue of can we have a quality government without quality voters? Can we have a prosperous Zimbabwe without quality voters? And in my view, this is tantamount to asking, can you have wholesome cream from a bucket of sewage? The failure to have quality electorate is at the very heart of why Zimbabwe is a failed state. We have had the misfortune, the double misfortune if you want, of having corrupt, incompetent leaders. And when you couple that with poor quality electorate, you are in serious trouble. I've got there on the screen a photo of President Emerson Mnangagwa saying Zimbabwe will be Africa's bread basket again. For those who are not familiar, it was the bread basket of the region up until the beginning of this century. When the regime, ZANU-PF, decided to seize the farms and allocate them from the white farmers mostly, and allocate them to the ZANU-PF ruling elite. It was disastrous. Zimbabwe's agricultural sector, which had been the backbone of the country's economy, all but collapsed. The country found itself a nation that had been the bread basket of the region. Suddenly, we couldn't even feed ourselves. The collapse of the agricultural sector, coupled with the printing of money, the craze of printing money of the period 2000 to 2008, accelerated the country's economic demise. By 2008, inflation had soared to a nauseating 500 billion%. The Zimbabwe dollar was absolutely worthless. The economy collapsed. It was near impossible to do any meaningful business in a country where the currency was losing its value by the hour. So the nation's economy collapsed. And this was to be extended in all other sectors besides agriculture, industry, and so forth. Zimbabwe's economy in that period, 2000 to 2008, shrunk by a staggering 50%. But if the truth be told, the country's economy had been in the decline since the country's independence in 1980. So we come back full circle to the question I asked originally. Can we have a quality government without quality voters? Can we have quality leaders without quality voters? Can we have wholesome cream from sewage? The answer has got to be no. Democracy, according to the ancient Greeks, as government of the people, by the people, and for the people, only works if the said electorate, the voters, are knowledgeable, well educated, diligent, and objective in carrying out their basic and most fundamental task in a democracy. That is to hold leaders to account. We in Zimbabwe did not have the fortune of having such leaders. And hence the reason why the country is in such a mess. We can talk about many other problems, but at the heart of it all, that is the reason why Zimbabwe is a failed state. I think it will be useful at this point to remind ourselves of what the Greeks meant when they say the citizen must be educated, knowledgeable, etc., etc. In their case, the Greeks divided the citizens in three distinct groups: the idiot, the tribesman, and the citizen. Here is an explanation of what each of those groups represent.
That there are always three kinds of people in any given society. This threefold distinction has been noted and made by notable sociologists and public intellectuals. But this threefold distinction of the three kinds of people, it was first identified and first stated by the supporters and founders of democracy in ancient Greece. For the Greek people, the people who in many ways gave us the modern civilized world. For the Greek people, the first kind of people in any given society are the idiots. For the Greeks, the idiot is not necessarily someone who is mentally deficient. Rather, for ancient Greek people, the idiot, they said, is someone who is a totally private person, a totally self-centered person, and a totally selfish person. They called him the idiot. The idiot, he is always out for his personal gain and his personal interests. He does not have a public philosophy. He has no knowledge, no skill, no character, and no virtues to be able to live and to be able to contribute in a flourishing society and community. He's all out for his personal pleasures and for his personal treasures. And the Greeks said that the idiot was just an upgraded barbarian. The first kind of person, the idiot. But the Greeks also said that there is a second kind of people in any given society. And the Greeks called these people the tribes people. When we say tribes people, we don't necessarily mean the fact of belonging to a certain tribe, which is a good thing. But when they use the word tribes people, the Greeks meant a tribal and a tribalistic mentality. And the Greeks said that tribes people are those people who are not able to think beyond their small tribe or their small groups. For tribes people, their primary allegiance, their only allegiance, and their ultimate allegiance is to their tribe. Their tribe is their God, and their religion is tribalism. And tribes people, the Greeks said, are always afraid of things that are different, that are a little alien to them. They are always suspicious and fearful. And they always dealt with different people and difficult situations with intimidation, with force, and with violence. And the Greeks also said that the ideal person for tribes people is the warrior, because tribes people are a war-making people. Their ideal is the warrior. But it was not so for the Greeks. For the Greeks, there was another kind of people, another kind of a person, and that was the ideal person. And the Greeks called this ideal person the citizen. The citizen. And here when we use the word citizen, we are not talking about legal status or political status. We are talking about the idea and the ideal of citizenship. And who is the citizen? The citizen, according to the Greeks, is someone who has the skills and the knowledge to live a public life, who is able to live a life of civility. The citizen recognizes that he or she is a member of a commonwealth and thus strives for the common good. That is the citizen. The citizen, yes, he or she knows his or her rights in a society, but he or she also knows his or her responsibilities to society. The citizen can fight for his rights, but always with an awareness of and with a respect for the rights and interests of others, of their neighbors, of the smallest of minorities, and of the worst of their enemies. And it is citizens, the Greeks said, that make up a civilized society. Because citizens settle their differences with civility. So they produce a civilized society. A society that truly lives up to the name, to the meaning of the name society. Society literally means friendship and friendliness.
I'll stop it there. I think it is important to understand here that in our case in Zimbabwe, unlike in other countries, we had the double whammy of having leaders who did not have the citizen mentality. When you look at some of our leaders, Mugabe, Mnangagwa, Chiwenga, these individuals are at best have the tribesman mentality. And in some of their cases, their mentality has driven them to the point where they believe that they are special. they've encouraged their followers to believe that they, the leader, are special. So we end up with this situation where the followers, the voters, treat the leader as a demigod. And they, the leader, start to believe they are demigods and behave accordingly. They do not believe they are accountable to the people. And this has been at the heart of our problems in Africa. When you're talking of a country like Zimbabwe, we have never had free, fair, and credible elections. Because ZANU-PF has always believed that they are not accountable. They have the divine right to rule, which is, of course, nonsense. No one has the divine right to rule. And worse still, when the economy started to founder, they have used violence to stay in power. Corruption has been one of the biggest problems in Africa, and in Zimbabwe in particular. In this article, somebody's talking of how much 42 tons of gold were exported to the United Arab Emirates in 2025 alone from Kenya. The article does not talk about how much gold was exported from Zimbabwe, but we already know from other well-documented evidence, like the 2023 Al Jazeera Gold Mafia documentary, that said 80% of Zimbabwe's gold, worth a staggering $2 billion per annum, were smuggled out of the country. Some of it to the United Arab Emirates. So we now have the case of Africa exporting our wealth to other nations and having very little to show for it. Because when something is smuggled, some people have failed to appreciate that in that process, the greatest beneficiary are those involved in the smuggling them itself. In the Gold Mafia documentary by Al Jazeera, it was shown that whilst the smugglers get a license from the regime to export, for the sake of argument, 50 kgs of gold, because nothing is documented, there's no records kept, the smugglers can export 5 times as much. and still claim they only exported what is on the license. And because nothing is properly recorded, when they come in with the money that they've reportedly got from the gold, they will declare only a fraction of it. No records are kept. So again, they can report a small percentage of the real money that they got. Those smuggling godfathers get a cut of what was declared. They have no records, so they've got to accept whatever they get. Again, a fraction. And it is some of this looted wealth that is then used to buy things like cars. In Zimbabwe, we have seen the country importing cars as if there's no tomorrow. These cars are not bought by the Minister of Finance. They are bought by those directly involved in the looting. Some of the people that have been used to buy these cars are none other than the likes of Chifayo, whom many people refer to as Chikanandas. That is the reality we are facing in Zimbabwe. They import these cars and they give them to strategic individuals for the sake of buying loyalty. And meanwhile, the country is spending millions of dollars buying cars, and yet its basic infrastructure is going to the dogs. Zimbabwe's education, healthcare have all but collapsed. This is the reality. But to come back to the issue of the gold smuggling, in the case of Zimbabwe, none other than President Mnangagwa himself was named in that documentary. He was referred to as number one. And his deputy, VP Chiwenga, was called by one of the gold smugglers Dandahead. In this picture, we can see one of the individuals who was named in that gold mafia documentary. Ambassador Hubert Angel. He is the one who was referring to Mnangagwa as number one, and that he can arrange some of this smuggling business. In this breaking news, we are told that President Mnangagwa has appointed Ambassador Hubert Angel to an expanded role as ambassador at large. Corruption was bad during Mugabe's time. but it has grown even worse since Mnangagwa took over. This is the tragic reality of our political system. The ordinary people do not have any idea of what is going on. And yet they are the ones who have got to make political decisions. They've got to vote these people into power. Mnangagwa has become so powerful and wealthy from all this looted wealth that he's able to buy the loyalty of the judges, church leaders, anyone who can help him win elections and stay in power. And it must be said, including the opposition itself. There's no doubt that our opposition has been corrupted to the point of becoming utterly useless. So I'll go back to the original statement I made at the beginning. Can we have a healthy government when we do not have competent voters? Competent voters in the sense of how the Greeks said the people should be educated, knowledgeable, diligent in holding those in public office to account. The answer has got to be no. Other countries that had leaders like Botswana and South Africa, whose founding fathers were committed to good governance, they gave their people a chance to learn and take the responsibility of holding the leaders to account with the seriousness it demands. I don't think the people of Zimbabwe, if they'd been given that opportunity, they would have done any differently. What we've got to deal with is the reality on the ground. The people were never given that opportunity. We have a ZANU-PF regime that has benefited from keeping the people in this tribesman mentality. And like I said before, extended in some cases to the point where the leader becomes a demigod. They've encouraged their followers to have that mentality. And when we elected the opposition leaders have come with the same mentality too. In getting their people to believe that they are infallible. At the present moment, one of the most contentious issues that the country has faced is the issue of, did Chamisa lie about the rigged elections? You would think that is obvious. That should not be an issue. Particularly now, 2 years after the rigged elections. That should not be an issue. We all know that he lied. He himself acknowledges that ZANU-PF rigged elections. The very thing that he was telling the people that he had plugged all the vote rigging loopholes, ZANU-PF will never rig the elections. He himself acknowledges that the elections were rigged. The people themselves acknowledge that the elections were rigged. SADC, the AU, and all the election observers condemned those elections for failing to meet the basic requirements for free, fair, and credible elections. And yet the supporters themselves, the Chamisa Chete Chete Brigade members, cannot bring themselves round to accepting that Chamisa lied to them. How they can fail to see the contradiction in that speaks volumes of what I was talking about here, quality voters. The media have not helped. They have brainwashed the Zimbabwean voter to the point where they cannot think for themselves. And hence the reason why leaders like Chamisa are able to con them, even with some of the most obvious and idiotic lies, like I've plugged all the vote rigging loopholes, when he knows that he didn't do so, when he knows that that is a lie. But that is where we are. And as a country, we have to accept that as long as we have an electorate that has really struggled to think for themselves, to think themselves out of this tribesman mentality, as the Greeks called it, we cannot have a healthy and functioning democracy. The ancient Greeks were right. In the ancient Greeks, they accepted that democracy only works if the people are educated, knowledgeable, etc. And they gave the vote to only those people, not everybody. We have given the vote to everybody. We have universal suffrage. And we have given the vote to people who really do not understand what their responsibility is. Who, while they exercise the vote, do not realize that in every right comes with it responsibility. You've got the duty to make sure that your exercising of that right does not undermine your other rights, or even that right itself, and the right of others. In the case of Zimbabwe, we have given the vote to people who really do not know what it means. And so it is not surprising that they have used it to undermine their own rights and those of others. Participating in flawed election in Zimbabwe has been the most outrageous thing that the voters have done, because they've been repeatedly warned that doing so will not change the result. That's number one. Number two, if you participate, you will give legitimacy to the process. And in this case here, legitimacy to the vote rigging ZANU-PF, and to perpetuate your own suffering. The opposition leaders like Nelson Chamisa and company have encouraged their supporters to participate because they also know that ZANU-PF was giving away a few gravy train seats, and that's all they cared about. The problem with our electoral system is we do have a problem with the voters. We do not have quality voters. And now our opportunistic politicians are using that weakness to con the voters to keep voting and perpetuating the dysfunctional political system. Think about it. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.